Hi, I'm Jack and welcome back to Real Opinions. This is another video from the London Film Festival. If you want to see more kind of films that we've covered, we did cover the big ones. You can kind of click somewhere in the corner or somewhere in the description. I'm sure there'll be a playlist somewhere. I think this is going to be the one video where I kind of cover multiple films in one, just because these were the ones where I really don't have that much to talk about, and I just kind of wanted to make my watching of them worth it. Like, I didn't just want to have seen these films not to get a video out of it, so I'm compiling all three into one. Okay, so the first is a French film called Planetarium, which stars Natalie Portman and Johnny Depp's daughter, who I can't remember the name of right now, but to be honest, I'm not going to. And the story kind of follows Natalie Portman and Johnny Depp's daughter as two psychic sisters in France, two Americans, and they just have this kind of seance psychic show, which they do to rich travellers in order to get money to continue their travels across Europe. And this one rich French aristocrat takes an interest in them due to an experience that he has with them, and basically pays for their lodges at the house, and it continues from there. And I know I already said this before, this is what it's going to be about. This was just a very dull film. I mean, it looked pretty for a lot of the time. It looked pretty, it was saying nothing. I mean, I thought the acting was melodramatically kind of just bad all the way through. Every bit of charm that they kind of introduced with the two girls, they immediately did away with like a creepy scene or an awkward scene. Not like massively creepy, I'm just a bit like, why is that needed? In terms of plot, it's all over the place. I didn't really get what the entire point of it was, and then when it comes around to the point, you're like, okay, so you were going for that the whole time. All the stuff that I really liked was just the period stuff, so it was just the style of it, and it wasn't even the filmmaking style, just more the production design, the art design, any reference to classic films and all of that, which, just because, I mean, it's playing up to my sensibilities in some ways does not mean it's good, and I would say that was a 3 out of 10. I left feeling it was a waste of my time. Go on to Two Lovers and a Bear, which is the second best of the lot. Two Lovers and a Bear was a film that I kind of just went into because it was short and I could see it before seeing another film. Like, I had the time. I saw they had Dane DeHaan and Tatiana, can't pronounce the surname, from Orphan Black, and so I thought, two decent actors. I was optimistic for this, I mean, despite knowing absolutely nothing, and it was quite slow. So the story is that it follows this kind of couple, sort of both bad for each other in a way. They both have they're both damaged people, really, and they're holding themselves together. And they're based in, I believe it's like Alaska. They never really state exactly where, like a very, very northern American town in that, imagine Fargo, but then with even more Arctic, as in there are literally polar bears going around. So there you go. And they basically decide, you know what, screw this life, we've got to leave, but we've got to go together. And they waste all their savings on a plot bit that I can't spoil, I suppose, which means that they can't take the plane home, so they decide to take their snowmobiles home. Right from the very first scene, I knew that I did not like this film because the two do not have chemistry at all. I did not believe it for 1 second. I thought it was very forced. I thought the kind of banter, I suppose, wasn't funny. It was all like meant to be like fun and games, like you're growing to like the characters in this scene, dialogue, but then underneath it, I felt like they were trying to push a theme, and it was very obvious with the way they were pushing it. Like, we're broken, aren't we? Sometimes life's tough, but you just gotta live with it. They come across a scene around halfway through the film during their journey, and I'm like, oh, that's a genuinely interesting visual metaphor. Like, it's a very obvious visual metaphor, but it's the way that they kind of show it is it's quite stunning and it's quite shocking in the middle of this film. I'm overemphasizing it because it was the only bit that I really liked in this film. But then, like, 20 minutes later, they come back to it in a conversation, and they're just like, did you ever think that that visual metaphor we saw earlier was this explained metaphor here? And then the other one goes, yes, I also thought that. I will repeat the metaphor very bluntly so that everyone gets it. We're both emotionally intelligent. Let's cuddle in a tent. Yeah, I just thought it was dull. I thought, again, it was right from the get-go. I just did not care for the two characters. I didn't care that they made it through to their journey. I didn't care about their situation. As I said, it was two broken people, but to be honest, it just felt kind of like one actually has a legitimately tragic backstory, which they drag out, and then the other one just has a very from the sounds of it, a very self-inflicted woe is me story. Yeah, I mean, it was just, I didn't like the two characters, I didn't like how they interacted, I didn't care about their journey, and then the journey itself was very dragged out and dull, so I just, like, it was competently shot and all of that. I mean, it was just... The scenes where those two are not together and there's other characters involved is quite fine, but then the moment that it's just those two on their own, I'm just, I couldn't care at all. Oh, and I did feel like I was completely missing something. That's why I was dragging this bit out. The title, Two Lovers and a Pair. So the rest of this film is kind of this mopey drama, and then out of nowhere, a talking polar bear comes into it. Just this talking polar bear keeps showing up throughout the film. And it's very obvious what he's meant to, like, represent. It was like a really forced quirk right in there, and I really did not care for that. It was probably 4 out of 10 at the time, but thinking back on it, it was such a waste that I just think 3 out of 10 now. And then on to the final one, which is Paterson. Right, Paterson is... Again, it was another film that I didn't really know anything about. I just saw they had Adam Driver in, and I really like Adam Driver, and he generally has quite good taste in picking projects, and so I thought, this will be interesting. This, I'd say, is the best film out of this lot, in that I would probably give it a 5 out of 10, but that's not to say that I feel like I've completely viewed it negatively. So the film kind of follows the structure of it's a week in the life of this guy called Paterson, who lives in the town of Paterson. It's just a very slow moving film that doesn't really do anything or say anything, and I was never as bored in it as I was with Two Lovers and a Bear or Planetarium. Yeah, it was just really just a week in a life, like it was almost like a slice of life film, but just a bit too dragged out for my taste. There was no need for it to be 2 hours or whatever it was. He's a poet, and so they frequently cut to him reciting poetry, which is fine for the odd scene, like the poetry is sometimes decent, but then they do this thing where he's writing a poem and they cut him off, and so then 2 minutes later he starts writing the poem again, but they start from the beginning, and I'm like, yeah, I heard the beginning, I know that you have to continue it for the flow, but why do we have to do this again? And they did that for one poem. I think we had to listen to it 3 different times, and I'm just, no, this poem is not special enough in the context of the film, or just in general, for me to have to listen to the beginning of it 3 times so quickly. And that to me just really drilled in this repetitive tone, like it's a week in his life and he's a bus driver, and so it's really about his routine, and he does the same thing every day with slight things different. There's little random quirks in there, which I'm like, are you trying to say something, or are you just trying to be different very, very slightly, or make it seem like you're not boring? There's lots of reference to twins throughout, lots of characters are get introduced, and then it turns out that they're a twin, and it's obviously just the same person, duplicated, but I mean, there's not... there's no other concept of why that, and then there's also reference to historical figures that were born and raised in the town, and some of them real, some of them not, and there's conversations that everyone talks about them on the bus that he overhears every day about this famous person grew up here, or this famous person came here, and there's lots of little individual recurring themes all the way throughout, but again, they don't really say anything, or they don't really add anything, and at the end you just feel this kind of empty feeling, which I suppose may be the whole point of it, just this kind of let's start the week again. I don't really need a film to tell me how repetitive my week is, because I can figure that out on my own. It wasn't even like it was depressing. They had little moments of... It did have moments of character where I did genuinely enjoy it. There were the odd laugh, which actually I was very thankful for, because without those, I don't think I would have liked it nearly as much. But yeah, just a very slow-paced film, very glacial pace, and I mean, if it sounds like your kind of thing, if you like the director, if you like the actor, definitely, if you just want to watch 2 hours of him on screen, be my guest. But yeah, it's just a very slow film, and it doesn't really say anything, but I didn't find it offensive in any way. Great, so that was kind of the boredom collection, I'm going to word it as. There were films that I really didn't like as well, but I wanted to cover that. I feel like I actually have enough to talk about with those ones, whereas these ones I just felt like I didn't have that much to talk about at all. If you want to see more reviews from the festival, click somewhere on the screen or somewhere in the description. Yeah,